You're thinking about hiring a professional designer for an upcoming project. The question is, should you? You might be surprised that my answer is maybe. Grab a glass of your favorite beverage, sit back and relax in a comfy chair, and let's talk retail. Several years ago, I was having a house built, and the agreement with the general contractor was that he would build the house and landscape the front yard, and I would be responsible for landscaping the backyard. And I thought, hey, no problem. I'm a designer. I can design the backyard. So I designed it, and designed it, and designed it, and designed it. And I never came up with anything that really felt right. And I couldn't even put my finger on it. I couldn't put my finger on what is it that's not working here. It just wasn't working. So I finally broke down and hired a landscape designer, because it finally occurred to me, you're a retail store designer. You're not a landscape designer. So I got a landscape designer to come in, and she nailed the design. Absolutely nailed it on the first try. She made great use of the space. She worked with the existing landscape that was already there. She made it easy to maintain. She identified and solved problems that I didn't even know I had. She turned the backyard into an oasis that I just absolutely loved spending time in. So what's the moral of the story? The moral of the story is sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And it's always great to have a partner who's got your back, who's been there before, knows what they're doing, and can guide you and take you places that you didn't know you were capable of going. First off, let's look at what a professional designer is going to do for you. And when I say professional designer, I mean a qualified designer. I mean, in the case of a retail store, someone who has years of experience in designing retail and also in brand development, because branding is becoming a huge, critical part of a successful retail store. So you want to make sure that you're looking at a qualified designer. What are they going to do for you? Well, there's the nuts and bolts aspects of the project in terms of they're going to make good use of the space. In retail, every month you're spending money on rent to rent the space per square foot. So you want to make sure that every square foot in that store is being as productive as it possibly can be. They're going to make the store easy to operate, and they're going to limit how many people it requires to operate it. So your labor expenses go down. They're going to help you make smart money decisions just on the construction of the space, and make sure that you don't spend inordinate amounts of money on things that just aren't going to get a return. They're going to help you make sure that you create an environment that has a really great traffic flow and feels like a story unfolding from the time that you enter the store to the time that you get to the back of the store to the time you leave the store, that it unfolds like a good book. But most importantly, they're going to help you to create a branded environment, an environment where customers can come in and experience your brand and develop a community around your brand. The world of retail, brick and mortar retail, is changing. It's evolving. It's not a revolution, but it is an evolution. And it is shifting toward more of a brand experience where people come in and experience the brand, and then maybe they make a purchase online later, or maybe they come back to the store and make a purchase later. But the goal of being in the store isn't always about sales, sales, sales. It's about developing a community, developing a relationship with your customer, and exposing them to your brand and getting their affinity for your brand. So it's really critically important that you have a designer who understands how to connect with people on an emotional level. That's where purchases come from. They don't come from up here. They come from down here. It's our feelings, our gut, that makes us decide whether or not we're going to buy something. So you need somebody who understands how to connect with that and how to elicit an emotional reaction in your customer. That's what's going to help you be productive in retail. That's what's going to increase your sales. Now, there's a spectrum of retail design firms out there. On one end, you have large firms, usually out of, say, New York, LA, Chicago, who work with really large retailers who have national and international chains, the Nordstroms, the Nikes, the Apples of the world. And these are great firms to work with because they have tremendous experience. They understand brand identity and how to tell a branded story. They understand how to create an environment that is going to engage with your customer. And they understand where retail is going in the future and how to create that brand experience for your customer. At the other end of the spectrum, you have what I call shop fitters or store planners. And these are companies that usually either sell contracting services or they sell retail display fixtures. And sometimes they'll offer you design services for a very low cost or even for free if you hire them to build your store or if you buy your display fixtures through them. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to both ends of the spectrum. The great thing about the big firms is they're going to help you develop a really powerful brand that has legs and can grow. The downside is they're really expensive. The upside to the shop fitters and the store planners is that the cost of doing business with them is a lot less. But the unfortunate thing is they're not really adept or interested in helping you develop your brand story. They're really adept at building stores. So if you're an apparel store, they're going to build you an apparel store, not necessarily a uniquely branded apparel store. So there's the disadvantage there. Our firm lands kind of somewhere in between. We do a lot of brand strategy work with our clients. We are forward thinking. We're on the cutting edge of retail design. We don't provide general contracting services, but we don't work with the really huge companies out there. Most of our clients are small to medium-sized businesses. And so we don't have 300 people in our office, and we don't have a big, huge, fancy office. So we're a lot more cost effective than those big firms. Now, the question is, how do you decide where you are on this spectrum and what works for you? What's the right fit for you? Well, one of the things that we're going to want to look at is budget. Let's say, for argument's sake, that you've got a 2,000 square foot space that you want to design. Build out in the United States right now is ranging somewhere between $50 a square foot and about $200 a square foot. It really depends on your unique circumstances, how big the store is, how much of the infrastructure you have to remodel, just how intensive the project is. But for round numbers, we'll use $120 a square foot. So if you've got a 2,000 square foot space at $120 a square foot, that's a budget of $240,000. Now, design fees usually range somewhere between 8 and 12%. This is not how we estimate our fees, but this is a good enough benchmark to decide whether or not we're in the right ballpark. So let's say for round numbers, 10%. If you have a construction budget of $240,000 and your design fees are 10%, design fees are going to be about $24,000. Now, if you're looking at those kinds of numbers and saying, "Oh my God, I've only got $15,000 to renovate this space," then hiring a firm like ours is probably not the best idea for you for a couple of reasons. One, because if we're still looking at that 10% number, if we're looking at design fees of 10% and that puts us at about $1,500 in design fees, that's not a lot of our time. We're not going to be able to do a lot of services for you, and we're not going to be able to really fully develop the project for you. We're really just going to be able to consult on a few issues here and there. And it's critically important to us that the work that we do for our clients has a great return on investment. We want to know that you're going to recoup our fees and even more. So if we can only put a few hours in here and there, we want to make sure that what we are doing for you is meaningful and it's going to have a tangible result. And $1,500 worth of our time doesn't probably give us the opportunity to really have that big of an impact on your project. But more importantly, I come from the school of thought that says the lower your budget, the more of it you really need to be able to spend on the build out. If you've only got $15,000, I wouldn't spend $1,500 of it on a designer. I would do the best that you possibly can to make smart decisions on your own, and that way that you can use that $1,500 on the build out. You're going to need to find a space that is already somewhat developed. For $15,000, you're not going to be able to invest a lot of money in things like mechanical, electrical, plumbing, knocking down walls and building new ones. You're going to need to find a space that really fits your needs as closely as possible from the get-go so that most of your decisions are aesthetic. I've been designing stores for 27 years as of today. And that means that for about 25 years, I've been answering those first phone calls from potential clients. Maybe they saw me speak at a convention, or maybe they saw the website or read an article in a magazine, and they called to see a little bit more about how we work and how, whether or not we're a good fit for each other. And I really enjoy those phone calls, to be honest with you. I enjoy talking to passionate retailers, people who are excited about something that they're in the process of developing. But I'd say over the years, about 50% of the people that I talk to for an hour or so on the phone finally realize that, man, I love what you do, and we could really use this, and I'm really excited about developing this part of our project, but we just can't afford you. And I've always tried to figure out what I can do for those people. I try to give them the best advice that I possibly can, maybe point them in the right direction. But I always thought there's got to be something more that I can do. I don't ever want to discourage people. You can open a store for $15,000 or $10,000 or whatever you have. You can make it work. You might have to be a little bit more creative, but it can happen. And that's partly what this series is about. He's giving you the tools to make smart decisions, creative decisions, that can get the doors open and get your brand out in the world where people can experience it and fall in love with it. So if this sounds like you love the idea of working with a professional designer, you see the value in it, but maybe you just don't have the budget for it. Or even if you do have the budget for it, but you just want to really understand the process better before you dive into it, this series is for you. We're going to talk about the nuts and bolts of retail. We're going to talk about how to design a retail store, what's critically important, the things that you need to think about, the things that you need to be watching out for, the pitfalls. We're going to talk about branding a lot because it's critically important. And we're going to help you get to that point where you can make smart decisions on your own. You can get those doors open, get the money flowing in, and then maybe sometime in the future, you can afford to come back and hire that professional designer to take you to that next level. So stay tuned, hit the subscribe button so you can see future videos. Make a comment, let us know what your experience has been in this process so far. Ask any questions that I can answer for you in upcoming videos. And let's keep talking retail.